Hello and welcome to ELT Under the Covers Crumbs on the Sheets, where we take a broader look at the education, learning and teaching industry community, and we go a little bit more in depth into topics that are on our minds and have been suggested by you, our viewers. But first, introductions. I'm Neil of NeilTEAcher.
Hello everybody, it's ProfesorRich.
Welcome back to Crumbs on the Sheets. What little morsels do we have to pick up today, Rich? What is our delectable, delightful, I can't think of another D word that's appropriate.
Today we're going to talk about nothing. I've got nothing.
Got nothing.
No.
Oh, the best.
What do we normally talk about on this show? There was some discussion, that something that we touched on a few times about exam backwash. And actually, it's not just exam backwash. We might as well just talk about exams in general. I'm going to have to be a little bit careful here. So let's just assume that everything I'm saying is based on someone else's anecdotes and experience, and
Of course, they are.
Absolutely nothing
an
to do.
amalgamation of many people, including myself.
Yeah, and many years and all kinds of stuff. But I'm going to talk hypothetically about a really bad language exam.
Okay.
Which exists, which people take in the UK. And actually, this bad language exam is not necessarily entirely the result of, but partly the result of a bad UK curriculum, which it's called the Skills for Life, English Skills for Life. And the curriculum was written in 2009. It's the first edition of that curriculum. Hasn't been updated since. So
Really?
yeah.
Wait, hold up. Can we pause for a second here? So this is an exam for a public institution. This is not just like working at a private institution where they go, hey, we need you to do these provas or these exams to pass people up to the next level, that kind of thing. This is like a governmental.
It's government recognised, government written qualification, yes. It's the Skills for Life ESOL curriculum, and as I've said, as far as I'm aware, this is what someone's manager I know told me, that it was written in 2009, hasn't been updated since. Apparently, they are in the process of updating it now. So this curriculum is, of course, a grammar-based curriculum. Yes, and it would be absolutely lovely.
With language.
Yeah, completely. It would be absolutely excellent if I had a copy of this in front of me right now, which I might have, sort of. It's difficult to find the official. I'm sure somewhere you can get the official curriculum document, and I'll take a look at that at some point. But I can.
Well,
Yeah,
I've got a
it.
nappy here, a soiled nappy.
What it says.
If I put that in front of you, is it distinguishable?
What it says is, it says stuff like able to correctly form present simple questions, and able to correctly form present continue, things like that. These like the curriculum aims, right? Mm-hmm. And then there's a number of topics: house and home, family, blah blah blah. Don't have a big problem with the topics. I mean, whatever. I suppose you've got to put some themes in there, but individual teachers can adapt and add things in if they want to, can't they? But it's the achievement aim, the fact that the definition of the achievement is based on grammatical forms. Now, there is some communicative achievement in there as well. Like, it says stuff like, learners are able to clarify miscommunications, things like that at a basic level, So there is some communicative achievement in there. But the fact that there's any grammar form-based stuff in there makes it very heavily focused on that when it comes to the exam. Because if you think about it, the communicative achievement stuff, you know, it's easy as an examiner and a teacher to justify that someone's done that. As long as it actually makes sense, the interaction, then you can argue, yes, they have achieved their communicative aim, if you want, right? And this is also the problem with this exam binary, which this one is. It's a yes, you've done it, or oh, you haven't done it yet. It's one of those. It's not like, oh, you did it 5 out of 10, or you did it 7 out of 10. Like that's
So
the kind of.
it's not quite like IELTS where you kind of get like a 4.5 or 5.5, like a scale. It's either a yes or a no.
That's right. And as far as I'm aware as well, IELTS is very similar to Cambridge English in that those scales come from scales themselves. So that there will be a scale of, for example, pronunciation in IELTS. So you might say, oh, their pronunciation's about a 6.5, and overall they get a 7 because their communicative, I don't know, discourse markers are an 8 or whatever, right?
Yeah, because they look at different aspects.
They look at different aspects. They give it a numerical score. There's some kind of broad idea of what each of those scores mean, normally defined in some schematic. But no, this isn't like this. This is like a yes or a no. So it's like the learner can use WH questions in present simple form, yes or no, right? That's actually one of the things. Okay. Using present simple WH questions, yes. So this is the situation with that. You're in the exam, and let's say your learner says all kinds of interesting stuff, and then it comes to the question part, where you have to synthetically encourage them to ask a question, because of course, if the opportunity doesn't naturally come up for them to ask a question, then they haven't demonstrated that they can form WH present simple questions. So you have to make sure that they're going to ask a question. For you in the role play and to other students in a discussion, these are the two tasks in the speaking exam. Mm-hmm. So whatever you do, you've got to get that in there, which, you know, I have a problem with straight away because it's just so weird and not natural communication. And then let's say they say something like, oh, I want to know what do you like the most? Well, if we then come to say, are they correctly using WH present simple question form? The answer there might be no, because they've used the auxiliary and done question inversion with what do you most like, but they were talking in reported speech because they said, I want to know. Mm-hmm. Compare that to something that would be correct according to the exam, which would be
what is it?
Yeah, what is it?
They could
how is it? What do you?
What?
Well, not that, but you know, you need an auxiliary. You know, which is better, hot or cold, or what do you like? Right, that would be correct. But to say I want to know what do you like wouldn't get the mark. Right?
Yeah, so you're almost kind of disregarding the effort. Yeah. Basically.
Not only that, you're
the attempt at a higher level.
That's it.
Question asking.
You are discouraging the learners.
That's the word.
From attempting things beyond the level, not even beyond their own level, but beyond the level that they're studying at. And you hear the kind of the veteran teachers there saying this. They say, "Oh, they were just getting ahead of themselves, weren't they?" What the hell's that supposed to mean? You know, that's like they did the exact. They got ahead of themselves, didn't they? They should just keep it simple. Why are we going to teach people to limit their communicative expression so that they can pass this grammar form based achievement. It's ridiculous. And what happens from this, right? What happens from this? What happens is, throughout the course, the very experienced teachers that always get everyone to pass, especially at other levels where it gets more complicated, they're just drilling this into the students. WH questions, question form, accuracy, 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 accuracy. No mistakes, no mistakes, no mistakes. Right? You forgot the auxiliary. Come on. You should know this by now. I want to know, what did you... No, too complicated. I want to know. Just what do you like, right? Right? Yeah. So that is... It's a poor... I think it's a poor way of teaching anything, but especially when it comes to something like language, where what you actually want to encourage is you want to encourage people to experiment and, don't worry too much and be confident and, go for it, improve your fluency, focus on communication. Do they understand you? So
I can understand the opposite perspective as well, though, because, like a lot of like with the question words or this, when we have structure, some students do that process of trying to take their natural, like their native structure and put it into English. What they do with questions when asking something in Spanish, or they would say, can you put to me a beer or something like that, and although we can although that's understandable, if we were to say, is that communicative? Yeah, but is it what we want? No. So how do we deal with stuff like that, where we could go, I can understand you, but it's like understanding Yoda.
Well, obviously this is not a binary. Obviously it's a spectrum of accuracy versus communication or something like that, right?
Yeah.
But, I was thinking about this the other day even, and I was discussing with my communication club community on Skype, the ProfesorRich communication club community. You should join. We have 30 members at the moment. It's free.
Link below.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, I'll send you. I'll
Limited
send you.
time.
There's not
Limited
actually. It's
offer.
totally free, but only join if you're a learner. I don't want any other teachers in there. I'll kick you out. So, anyway, I was having a chat about this, and I said, the thought just came to me, like I very like the paella, or the people is very crazy. There's something actually a little bit charming about that kind of Spanglish, It's it's obvious what you mean. Oh, if you go out Valencia on a Saturday night, the people's very crazy.
Yeah.
But the grammar's off, obviously. Article and the subject verb agreement. Well, it's not the subject verb agreement, is it? It's the... Yeah, it is. It's the subject verb agreement. That's off. But and you might say that in certain circumstances there might be some stigma with that, but not a lot. And in other circumstances there's a bit of charm with it even. So now at some point it obviously does become really bad English, because we've all spoken to somewhat a non-native speaker at some point, and it's really difficult to make sense of what the hell they're talking about. And obviously that's where it becomes a problem. But when it's obvious what they're talking about, I just don't think it is a problem. And the thing is, Neil, what you're actually saying is the reason why people would argue for this grammar-based form achievement, is because they will say, oh, but if we don't do this, then they'll have all these fossilized errors later on. But of course, we need to remember that also this was the justification for the grammar translation method. The idea that your language is perfect before you start to speak. So you have to perfectly understand the language and then you can speak. And that way we're not going to have any of these horrible fossilized errors, right? Mm-hmm. So
I think if we were to apply it to non-native English speakers, it should also be applied to English speakers.
It already is, though, isn't it?
No, I don't. I feel like less and less. Like there's more kind of, when you hear someone like where I'm from, my neck of the woods in the north. When I go back now, I'm like, something, especially when it starts to get a little bit more dialectical, then you're like, how does even, remember Kes, the movie Kes? When that was first released, that was they had to do subtitles for that down in London, because they couldn't understand the Yorkshireisms that are there and that are all right.
That's right.
You kind of like, hold on, we accept this as a quirk, like you're talking about. Why can't we accept, the people are crazy, whatever, why can't that be?
Well, they don't.
Do we want that?
Well, they
Shouldn't
don't.
there be a standard, Rich? Shouldn't there be a standard?
There needs to be a standard, but also we don't accept it. We don't accept regionalisms. It seems relatively that we do now, and there's a few reasons for that. One of them is that you might not, especially given what you've just said about going to Sheffield, you might not realise it, but actually regional accents are way less than they were in the past. They're way more standardised than they were in the past.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because of...
Where are you drawing that nugget from?
Research in applied linguistics on specifically sociolinguistics and sociolinguistics vowel shifts and things like that.
What was the reason? I'm just curious now. What was the reason behind that?
That's
Did they come up with anything? Or?
Well, I'll talk about that in a minute. So there's a really interesting thing you can find. I can't remember who did the research, but you've got all the original recordings, and they were recorded quite a long time ago. I can't remember exactly when, but they had a lot of. No, I'm talking like the 50s or 60s or something, or maybe even 40s, and they involve quite old people as well. Now you realise old people's accents do change, but they change way less than generational change. Mm-hmm. So, for example, the kids will speak differently than the parents, and that will be a bigger change than how the way the parents will speak throughout their life will change, which will also change. So we had these kind of 70-year-olds, which meant they were born in the sort of early 1900s or before late 1800s, right? And their accent to us just sounds wildly thick, like so thick, right?
Yeah.
Like there was someone from Yorkshire, really strong, and like I could barely understand what they were saying. It was when we were bed at first. It was one up and one down and da-da-da-da-da-da. I was like, what the fuck is that? So that indicates that those really strong accents, those really strong localized accents, they have been standardized. Now, my inclination, and I think anyone's inclination if you think about it, would be to say that that's because of television, radio, things like that. Mm-hmm. For some reason, my applied linguistics professors seem to justify that wasn't the case. They had some evidence to say that wasn't why it was, but I don't really know.
What was the other reason? What was that alternative?
I don't know. They always want, because they had an agenda and they always wanted to go to the social issue, right? So their belief was that, for example, there's no such thing as an accent that sounds bad. It's just that you don't like the people. Right? That's what they said. They said that they're basically saying that there's, this is what he said. The guy, the sociolinguistic professor or lecturer. I don't know if he was a professor because he was quite young. He said that there's no sound or phonemic or quality of speech which is negative or positive other than how you feel about socially about those group of people, whether it's conscious or unconscious. So if you say, for example, I don't like the Scottish accent, he would say, no, you just don't like Scottish people. Or even if you say like, oh, I don't like the way the Queen speaks. It's like, oh, well, you don't like the Queen.
I would heavily disagree with that, and I think it's because a lot, when we're talking about accents, I think it's less to do with like Scottish. I would say Scottish accent is an accent. The words do change, but it's mostly kind of like intonation and stress. Whereas I think where it kind of goes awry is when we're talking about these kind of like that Spanish. The people are crazy or crazy people, whatever it was. It like it's the structure. If the structure is wrong, is what gets us, right? Like if you hear something and you're like, I understand, but it's jarring. Like if you have an idiom and it's like this is a piece of pie. You're like, wait, hold on, what? It triggers that kind of like your brain where you're like, wait, something was wrong there. Or like there's that kind of like, I think it's like a natural thing. It's like when you see errors in nature, or the way it's not in your head, you kind of get this kind of like a pattern disrupt or whatever you want to call it. Like where you see those what's that pattern that you see on people's skin that's kind of, it's not like a honeycomb, but for some people it's really disgusting because it's to do with like a disease or something. And anyway, I'm going off tangent here.
Okay, some kind of scaly skin disease.
No, it's not scaly. It's like like when you see pockets, like acne. It's something to do with that. I can't remember what it was.
I know what you mean. Some of the kids at school had that, like craters in their face.
Yeah, but the way that it the pattern forms, there's a pattern in nature that indicates that it's diseased or like poisonous or something. So which is why we're so
people
averse
don't
to
like
it, even though we're like, it's just acne,
right?
Okay.
So, well, it seemed like what you were saying there was something like, it doesn't matter so much about the sounds as it does about the form.
Yeah, that's what I think it is. I think it's
okay.
If someone says something and we're like, it kind of bothers you.
I'm gonna put you in a difficult position now. And
okay.
My professor would definitely say that you're a racist. So, do you know the most?
Well, that is true, but I think that's not part of the conversation.
So to use your
that
word,
always bothers me as well, though. Why do we call it racism when we're all like the human race? Shouldn't it be like ethnicism?
Oh, Neil. You're arguing from the position of 1990s liberal. I mean classic liberal who believes in liberalism. Those ideas are long gone now. Anyway,
we're not one human race, are we now? We're all different.
Well, it depends who you ask. But a lot of people definitely don't seem to think we are anymore, which is apparently progress. So anyway, the most common, to use your term, dialect, the most common dialect ever studied. Now, in sociolinguistics, dialect is a stigmatized term, and so is accent, and so is language. Instead, they use the term variety for everything. It's just variety. So they would say a variety of English, but they wouldn't even be that comfortable with that. It's really just a variety. the most studied one ever, right, is African American variety English. It's interesting for a number of reasons, one of which being that it's spoken all over the United States. It's not geographically constrained, even though it does have a southern twang to it, as you'll probably know. So, some examples. I don't care what he say, you gon' laugh. Or, I tell him to be quiet because he don't know what he talking about. He all right. She at home. Right?
Okay.
These are structures from African American variety English, right? So if you hear that and have a negative reaction to it, again, according to my professor, that would mean that you have some issue with the people who speak that way.
Right. Okay.
Apparently.
Okay.
Personally, I find that way of speaking quite charming in general, and I don't actually associate it. So I know it is classed as African American variety English, but to me it seems to have so many traits of just kind of southern, you know, it's quite similar to sort of southern US redneck talk in a way, isn't it? And I find that quite charming sometimes as well.
What blipped into my head was, do you remember Airplane when he's like, "Don't worry, I can talk jive."
Sorry, Neil, just pause for one moment. Okay, brilliant. Cheers. Yeah. Thank you. Okay, continue. Sorry, it was just a parcel. I thought Rob might have arrived, but no, it's all right.
No worries.
Sorry, go back to that thought.
What popped into my head was Airplane. You know, when he's on Airplane and he's moving past those black guys, and he's like, he's got asked a question. And he's like, "Oh, don't worry, I speak jive," and then he starts to speak kind of like that. And I'm like, it just feels like a relic nowadays, you know. But you know, it's
not.
I wouldn't apply that to a particular ethnicity or.
Well, the sociolinguists do, and they would argue that when you measure the way that people speak, you'll see that the vast majority of people who speak in this way are African American, and then. Which I hate the term African American. They're black. Okay, so black people in America, and then they will go on to say other people who speak in this way. There's two things that they're doing, right? One of them is I can't remember what they call it, but it's like being authentically like a lone part of that community, and they actually they gave Eminem as an example of that, saying that he authentically kind of went through that community. So when he speaks in that way, even though now he's like an incredibly wealthy upper middle class American, when he speaks that way, it's perfectly valid. But when someone else does it, like for example, you said the guy who said, "Oh, I speak jive," and he did it, they call that performative blackface. And they liken it to the minstrel performances of the 1920s. Oh, fuck me.
It doesn't feel like
don't go to university. Do not go and study anything.
I don't know. I'm open. I'd be happy to really listen and kind of wrap my head around it, because then there's.
So was I.
There's probably elements of truth, that.
There definitely is.
Whenever you go to a different culture, I mean, we know it because we've been popping around the world here and there. You do kind of adopt certain terms or whatever that you kind of like helps you kind of fit in, or you just like as well. I'll if someone's taking a shot, I might end up coming out with a toka, or if someone's fighting, I might be like, if someone's like doing some competition, I might be like, be saying like fighting or jiaoza, whatever.
Yeah.
Because it feels it's easier and it's better than going, go on then.
Right.
It doesn't feel very kind of like competitive, or like just shouting out shot just kind of sounds like it kind of sounds worse than saying take it, because I like the toka, take
Uh-huh.
it, you
Uh-huh.
can do it. Where if you just say shot, 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 it's just like, well, that's what you're doing, but you're not. It doesn't encompass the idea of like kind of overcoming alcohol, even
Right.
though it's
Yeah.
weird, but you know.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. No, I know what you mean. I mean, there's you're talking
So
about
is that appropriation
adapting.
then? Is that performative?
Jesus. No. I mean, I'm not going to take that position because I think all of that like putting the emphasis so heavily on social structures and giving social explanations, especially ethnic-based social explanations for everything, is bollocks. So I'm not going to defend
The
that
world's too
or take up
complex.
that.
It's got to be an entire socio-economic model. You
Yeah.
can't just pick, like ethnicity. You've got to pick ethnicity and what's your social class, and
Oh, it gets even more fun. But to go back to what you were saying about I'd be all right discussing that and thing. This was the thing, they shut the discussions down.
really.
Yeah, the comment on the gender spectrum in the lesson was, I'm not going to take any questions on this. If anyone has an issue with it, come and see me during my office hours, and I will explain to you. That was it. And then when it came to this, the performative blackface, I did say something about it, and the guy who was a white German fella who was the tutor said, "Oh, but you're a white guy, so you can't really comment on this." It's like, okay, thank you. That's
Really?
fucking really useful. Yeah, he actually really said that. And
Wow.
like some of the other students just look embarrassed by that. They're just like, what the fuck? Yeah,
Well,
exactly.
embarrassed by you or by him?
Yeah, well, by him, I think there
Oh, okay.
were some who were just embarrassed by the whole conversation. But you have to think, 50% of my course was Chinese, so they were like, "What the fuck's going on?"
Yeah,
Yeah.
I can't imagine them taking any of that shit. Well, I don't know. Them?
Oh no, they
I
just
might, I
they
might
just
be.
they're very, yeah, they were just whatever. They just wanted to pass the course. They,
Yeah.
they just took it on board and then ignored it later. Anyway, so yeah, African American Variety English, and whatever, and it's really interesting. It'd be really interesting to study this and not like put it in this horrible, unnecessary racial lens where you're then talking about performative blackface and all this absolute bollocks. Like you say, there probably is some truth to it. I'm sure there is someone somewhere who dislikes a certain group of people and is taking the piss out of them doing their accent, and that you might say is not very nice. I don't want to know if it's an expression of racism. It could be, but let's say it's not very nice, right? But on the other hand, it might just be a bit of fun. It might not even be that big a deal. I mean, I do the Japanese accent to my Japanese student as a joke, and they find it funny and they're not upset, and it's not nasty. It's just fun, I actually find the Japanese accent really fun, and other accents as well. I love playing with accents. I find it funny. So this idea of performative, whatever, and it's like it simplifies. It's a massive oversimplification to say that when you imitate something, you're mocking it.
Hmm.
Like, that's not necessarily the case at all, is it? So anyway,
That's true.
I don't like it. But to go back to our point, which was about standardization, basically, and focus on form, I do think there needs to be some degree of, of course there needs to be some syntactical focus, because otherwise, how are the learners? You're supposed to be speeding up the learning process for the learners. You're not just dropping them in a bowl of native speakers and saying, right, come back in 5,000 hours and let's see how you speak English. Most of the time, they're going to class because they want you to accelerate that process. You don't just accelerate the process by talking to them, because, of course, they can do that anyway. So there does need to be some focus on form. Obviously, it's beneficial to be able to have some rules in your head where you can put something together and know that the other person gets an idea of what you mean. But I just think there's instances where, like if they put the wrong preposition, or one of the verb forms is wrong. Like the other day, I was thinking about going run in the park. Wrong. You said run and not running. You know what I mean? Like something like that. Like, whatever. It's not even worth correcting it, in my opinion. It's such a minor little thing, and everything else they said was great, and it totally doesn't affect anything in the meaning. But the structure of these exams is something that, you know, it just says that wasn't right. So simplify it, boyo. Stop trying to be so complex. Just do the simple thing and get it right, and pass the exam and go to the next exam. And of course, it all feeds back into the classes and the materials and everything. And for someone like me, who doesn't teach like that, hates teaching like that, what I do is pretty much for the whole semester, I just teach whatever the hell I want, basically.
Yeah.
I focused on the topics, to be fair, and, you know, and the grammar points as well. But, you know, if suddenly Goner comes up, but it's not in the syllabus, I don't care. Past simple, I talked about that before. Past simple's not in the curriculum, but I wanted to speak to them about their weekend, so I taught them past simple, and we spoke about their weekend. Okay, whatever. Which the other teachers, or some teachers, might say that that's overcomplicating it, and they might say that in the exam now. They might ask a past simple question and get it wrong and not get the point. You know what I mean? And then what I do is, like, a couple of days before the exam, I just massively drill all the bollocks that they need to pass the exam, and then pass the exam. Yeah, and I just think that's so unfortunate, and it's kind of risky as well, because that could go wrong for me. As it happened, I've been all right so far, but it could go wrong. People could fail, and then there's two metrics that I'm judged on more than anything else, which are attendance, which is a weird thing to be judged on as a teacher, really. But it's because it's not me, really. It's the college is judged on that. So the department's judged on that. So the teachers are judged on that. Because if your students are not coming to the classes when the government's paying for like 50% of them, then obviously they're going to get pissed off about it. They want good, high attendance. So attendance and pass rate, because they want people to be passing the exams, right? Their exams, which are based on their syllabus. So they're the metrics I'm judged on. I'm not judged on, I'm not judged on by a feedback form where the students are asked, do you enjoy your classes? Do you get a lot out of the classes? Do you feel you're learning English? Nobody gives a shit about that. It's just those two metrics, right?
Right.
So it's incredibly frustrating because it all comes down to the exam, and the exam all comes down to that syllabus, and that syllabus, the problem with that syllabus is the emphasis on grammatical form, and that it's a yes-no thing.
Right.
Because imagine if they phrased it a different way. If they said, student has like the appropriate competency in simple grammatical forms making questions, something like that. Be able to be some give and take there. So it's like if they were, for example, to say, I want to know, what do you think? You could give them that then. Because you say, hey, they are expressing quite a bit of competency with forms that are even more complex than what they should know. So they're going to, I'll give them a 4 out of 5 there, right? And then they pass. Like, that's how they do it with Cambridge English, for example. As I said, they are currently rewriting the syllabus.
How long have they been doing that for?
I don't know, but it apparently is going to come out next year. So I'm not going to...
We'll have to do
not going to hold my breath.
Review video for
that would be interesting, wouldn't it?
Like,
I mean, if the syllabus comes out and it's like...
Unboxing.
If it's like suddenly competency focused and like lexically organized, I'll just be like... They just rewritten the whole thing.
What's because of this one thing, this particular test, everything else has kind of been aligned to it. So basically, what you're saying is like a lot of the institutions, to meet the metrics, to to because they got to pass the test because that's part of one of the metrics. So that means that a lot of the teachers are to make sure they meet those metrics is to basically teach to test. Is that what they're doing?
Everyone's teaching to test, which is the main
and we
aim.
know when you teach to test doesn't necessarily mean that you are actually teaching.
Let me give you
you're actually getting communicative.
Let me give you an example for these WH questions, right? So some of the students didn't get their WH question correctly in the discussion, but then if they do get it in the role play, they still get the mark. So the role play was that they have to speak one-to-one with me and they have to book a certain type of class. I better not say what type of class it is because it's still a live exam. So, but let's say they have to book a language class, right? Mm-hmm. So we have a role play and they have to book a language class. So what I said to them, what we drilled the day before was, how much does it cost, right? Because actually all of the role play topics that applies for, like there was like ordering a taxi, booking a restaurant, booking a holiday, like all this kind of stuff. So I just drilled the question, how much does it cost? 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 And I said, at some point in the role play, I will say, what questions do you have for me? And you say, how much does it cost? We spent like 2 hours on that. And then in the exam, that's what they all did. Oh, do you have any got any questions for me? Yes. How much does it cost? Ding, you've got the mark.
Do you explicitly say that or explain about this teach to test mentality, or
with
like
with the majority of my students, they don't have the English really for me to be able to explain it to them. So no. And with the advanced students, I occasionally make comments, and sometimes what I normally do with students is I will go into the way I think it should be done and the positives of it, rather than hammering too hard on the critique that I have. Because the thing is, they've got to take the exam, and you don't want to make the students feel super negative about the exam that they're doing, because it's going to make them feel negative about the course, because the course is the exam, So rather than doing that, I might say something like, I get a bit frustrated that we have to do this because let me tell you about this, right? And then we'll go into, for example, learning things lexically, or focusing on communication over form, or thinking phrasally rather than individual words, and the lack of importance of getting the wrong preposition and stuff like that, Yeah. But then I'll always have to give a disclaimer of like, yeah, but in the exam, this is what you need. It's worse in the writing exam. The writing exam was mental. Right?
Yeah. You've talked about that
right.
extensively in our very first. No, or was it second?
We did talk about it.
Yeah, I know. Okay. It was our first.
Yeah.
Crumbs on the sheets, and some crumbs you just can't get rid of very easily. They become stains.
So
get ground.
So the reality is that this exam, it encourages things like memorization, rehearsal, and sort of just learning phrases, cramming it, blurting them out in the exam, and then forgetting about it. And that's exactly the kind of exam that we should have moved away from a long time ago, in every possible way, because cramming is retarded. Okay. Yeah. It's so useless, isn't it? You just cram a load of stuff, pass the exam, and forget it all.
Of learning.
I don't know if it's the antithesis of learning, but it certainly doesn't help.
Yeah, I'm gonna stick my flag down in that one. Because you can memorize, but it doesn't mean that you learn. It doesn't mean that you understand. And when it comes to application, there are really wide-reaching implications of an education system where everyone does rote memorization or repetition through rehearsal or what have you, because when they actually have to use knowledge, they don't have it, and they might be in a position where that knowledge is needed to move that society forward. Like if they're
Yeah.
just memorizing, physics or like uh, stuff like that.
Yes.
Yes, that is important for certain for certain things, but what's more important is how you understand and apply formulas, right? Same with language, same with math, whatever. If you can't, if you just saying yes, I know this, and then give that memorized answer, and then but then what what does it what does it what does it do? How do you utilize, how is that utilized and applied?
That is an awesome take. I think that's a really ideal summarization of where we're going with that, and also that will lead really well into what we might want to talk about next, which would be something like how education stifles creativity.
On the next exciting episode
Exactly.
of Crumbs on the Sheets.
That's the one.
That's going to be all for us this week. What do you think of what Rich has been bringing to the bed today? Uh, we never established it was a bed, but I'm presuming it was.
It kind of has
It,
to be, doesn't it? I mean, if we've got sheets and crumbs and there's things going under them, I mean, what else can you have with sheets and crumbs? It could
yeah.
be a table sheet. Where all this time we've been ELT under the covers, and we just mean the table cover. We're just taking off the tablecloth.
He just paints a really sad image of like you and I under the table, trying to pick up the crumbs from our masters that have dropped on the floor.
Yeah, we better make it a bed. Anyway, yes,
But yeah,
yes, we'll wrap up for
what did
today.
you think about today's little conversation? What are your experiences with that? I know that this is probably going to be triggering a lot of teachers out there, especially the private institutes that are just like that have to do a week of exams that don't really matter just to get the students to be put into the next level of classes that, so, it's just a day wasted really. Well, let us know. Let us know at eltunderthecovers@gmail.com. Go to the website, eltunderthecovers.com. Leave notes, comments in the comment box below, and I'll pass it over to Rich to kind of give us a succinct summary of the episode and his final thoughts, and just kind of like an inspirational speech off the top of his head.
I feel like you've already sort of done that, but I guess because your speech, I think, was kind of the ideal end point of our discussion. But I suppose to sort of summarize what we've gone through, we've gone from the government curriculum of ESOL Skills for Life, how it has some grammar-based defects in terms of a heavy focus on form and a yes-no achievement criteria, which they call positive marking, and it is positive marking, but the fact that it's yes-no, I think, is unfortunate, especially because it takes power out of the hands of the assessor, but then they constantly say, oh, it's at the discretion of the assessor. So there's something contradictory in there as well. This, of course, feeds into the institutional aims because they want high pass rate, which feeds into the teaching and the metrics that the teachers are measured on, which means that if you're someone like me who's motivated by effective teaching rather than exam pass rates, then you feel this kind of horrible cognitive dissonance between how you want to be and what you want to be passionate about and what your institution's pushing back against you. And I've even got like people in management saying to me, like making odd comments like, oh, I hate that we have to do this about the exam. But then, 5 minutes later, it'll be like, oh, make sure you're like getting your students to come to every class and following up on their attendance and, blah, 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 exams. Anyway, it all comes down to the fact that focusing on grammar form is not necessarily bad, okay? But I'm jumping on the other side of the seesaw because I just think there's a hugely excessive focus on grammatical form. It's everywhere. It's everywhere. It's in the minds of our students. People are asking me error correction and grammar rules all the time. It's like the questions you always get from students because they get it drilled into them how important it is to speak just perfectly. Whereas I think we need to focus more on training them to just not care sometimes whether the preposition is to or for. Just say it, you know. And I had the same issue in Spanish, and my Spanish was frozen for a long time. I don't know if you remember. I could speak, but it was very word to word. It took me a long time to think about stuff because I was always trying to get all the forms absolutely right, and it hampered my communication. And it took me years of language teaching to realize that and to realize how to overcome it. That's my final thoughts. Thank you very much for watching. Like, subscribe, and we'll see you next time.
If you're looking for more information from myself, you can go to teamteacherchina.com. We've got a whole bunch of materials, PowerPoints that you can use instantly in the classroom. We've got a Team Teacher China YouTube channel where we have videos teaching you how to use those materials. Team Teacher English, where we put those materials into a video form for self-study. And Team Teacher Baby, where I take my experience as a teacher and put that into parenting.
And go to youtube.com/ProfesorRich to see some English teaching. You can catch me weekly live streams on Oxford Online English YouTube channel. Oh, and also you can do a YouTube search for POG space UK, and you would get my alpha version of my new gaming channel, which actually just have some trial content on there at the moment. You can email us here at eltunderthecovers@gmail.com if you have anything you'd like to contribute to the show.
Smash that like button, share and subscribe.
And watch 100% of the video and don't click off. Thank you.
Bye.